So it says that I'm live. I just want to make sure that it is actually live on my Facebook. My microphone is on. Thank you for those of you that tuned in yesterday during, hopefully today is different. I just completed a live stream in Bankroll itself for like the monthly Q&A. And it seemed to be fine. So hopefully this works as well. So if you are here live, let me know in the comments. If you're watching a replay, give me a little comment and saying that you're here. In the last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of brand new people come into my space. I go by Stefania Maria in the coaching spaces just because it's a little cheeky. So if you are familiar with me, today is going to also kind of be like almost like a reintroduction to who I am and what it is I do. And today to teach you guys a little bit about Wealth Imprints. So before I get into any of that, I think it's important that I share what got me here and why it is that I teach about embodying your innate wealth, right? And what does that actually mean? So, excuse me. I think it's important to start at the very beginning of my childhood. So I did not grow up in a very wealthy family. My parents worked minimum wage jobs, were paycheck to paycheck, side hustles, trying to find any way to make an extra dollar. And, it's fine. I never went without as a kid, to be honest. I always had everything I needed. My parents did very well in terms of making sure I was taken care of. Always had food in my belly, went to school, washed, cleaned, the whole nine. But because I was really aware of the financial struggles that my parents had for myself, I made it my mission to ensure that I would have a life that provided me financial security. And as I got older, I started to learn what that would entail, right? So I kept hearing all of the narratives that I was being fed by society and teachers and academia, that I learned that business school would be a really great place to go. Up until that point, I wanted to go to be a lawyer. So I really loved Harvard and every movie I'd ever seen. And business school was one of the ways that I was like, okay, well, you know what? Okay, I'll make good money coming out of business school. It's kind of how you get one of those CEO jobs or upper like VP jobs. So I got to go to business school. And I went, right? And at that point, when I graduated high school, I was really good at school. Like principals list, school was really easy. I understood things. I had one of those personalities that like the community would say was like, oh, Steph's going to do something with her life, right? Do something, whatever that meant. And so I applied to university. I got into a very competitive business school here in Canada. And I didn't realize at the time that only 13% of the applicants actually got into that faculty, right? I just thought, I was like, oh, whatever, like I'm good at school, I'll just get in and no big deal. And I didn't realize the gravity of like, oh, I got into this program. But the moment that I actually understood that I got into this like quite elite program, I started to get a lot of pressure. And I put it on myself because I was like, shit, like I got to really get this if I'm going to be successful and have that financial security that I want. And so I went into university, bright, shining, and I failed. I failed macroeconomics, microeconomics twice each. I failed calculus 3 times. And when it came to accounting, I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was all of these things with numbers and money and things that I previously could understand, right? Like I had worked throughout high school. I made good money in high school. I worked a union job. I was making more money than both my parents at one point. I all of a sudden didn't understand numbers anymore. I didn't understand how money worked. I didn't understand how buying behavior worked. I understood none of it. And I just kept failing. So when it came to my accounting exam, I failed the midterm so miserably that I went to the TA and I was like, listen, what do I got to do to pass this class? And he laughed in my face and walked away. So I decided at that moment, fuck it, I'm going to go to the final drunk, which most people at that point would just say, fuck the course, but like, not girl. I decided to drink a couple shots of tequila and walk into my final. It also helped that the final was on my 19th birthday, which is like the legal drinking age in Canada. And somehow, and I refuse to question it. But what's funny is throughout university, right, here I am failing these courses in academia, microeconomics, macroeconomics, accounting, not understanding math, like not getting it. But in industry, I was. You see, because I didn't come from a super wealthy family, my family couldn't afford to like pay my tuition and me just focus on school. Because I worked, I also didn't have enough time to allocate towards studies to become a scholarship student. Also couldn't understand the content anyway to get a scholarship. And because I had worked so much, I wasn't qualified for student loans. So I kept leaning further into industry rather than heavily on my academia. Now, what I mean by industry is I worked at a bank. I worked as an accounting clerk at an auto group. I was promoted to running the entire like car processing for an entire dealership. After that, I went and ran the financial operations for an international startup. So meanwhile, academia world, I was failing miserably, but in industry, I was getting it. I was getting the applied knowledge of how money worked in the real world, not in theory, but in practice. And as I started diving further into industry, I got mentors who are CPAs and CFOs and everybody kind of rallying behind me to follow their path. And I gotta be honest, I was so jaded about my academia world that going down that path of becoming a CFA, a CPA, staying in the financial and accounting worlds terrified me, because I was in industry understanding what I needed to understand. But when I would pick up a book, I would lose it all. I wouldn't get it. And so there was this way that I was like, there's something missing here and I can't put my finger on it, but I don't want to follow that path. So I decided just to kind of stick to it, boots on the ground, doing the kind of the grunt work of numbers. And I started to kind of bump up against something that I started to see far more often. And so if you come from a startup space, or it's primarily in the startup space, but you also see this in traditional industries as well, is that there's quite a binary experience for people, right? You'll have one group of people who are all about, we get to make more money. These are usually the CEO archetype or the sales archetype. We're just going to make another sale. We're going to get another investor. We're going to have more money. And they're the bright, shining star, right? And then we call them the idealists, right? The accountants, the financial managers, the job costs. They should look at reality today, not tomorrow when we will get more money, but today what we're going to do with it. Now, because you have these two separate groups, you see them clash all the friggin' time, like all day long. I have not ever met in the traditional industries a sales department and an accounting team see eye to eye. Whenever you see startups fall apart, it's usually because you see a CEO against a CFO. There is a disconnect between these two groups. And that disconnect became more and more obvious to me, and I couldn't reconcile it for myself. And so I started to kind of get more curious about what was going on. And I kept, I unfortunately was put in the realist side a lot of the time. Bonkers. Okay. I was cast on the fearless side because I was the one making the 16 cash flows. I was the one doing projections. I was the one paying people internationally. I was also the one receiving money. I was the one running across the border to deposit checks, you know. I was also the one that had to coordinate reduction in force when we couldn't afford payroll, right? There was a lot of things that I was responsible for and accountable to, that I started to get jaded about the discrepancy that I couldn't reconcile, because in my heart, I knew we can always make more money. But I was faced with a reality that was so painful, it was hard to trust in that. And so in turn, I got classified as like scarcity mindset, while I needed to have more of an abundance mindset. But that just further ingrained the discrepancy that I couldn't reconcile for myself. I ended up leaving that role because I wanted to start my own business, and the business that I ended up creating was the wrong business. I pissed off a lot of people. I made a lot of money. I built the wrong fucking thing. But it was from the same place of like, can we use resources in a way that's result? There was this way that we just kept spending money because we could get more of it. But it was done in a way that I found to be irresponsible personally. Others may not see it that way, but I did. And so where there's irresponsibility, there's a lack of resonance. It can't be true if it's irresponsible. If it's responsible, it's closer to truth than anything, right? And for me, there was this idea that if we could create a system where people could know where their money would be allocated and not jeopardize their resources in the process, then we would have built the greatest tool ever. It's not wrong. It's actually quite a juicy tool. However, it doesn't teach people about why they're behaving the way that they're behaving. And a system can't solve people problems. A system, a tool, an application, a website, a browser cannot solve people behavior. So what was it that was identifying these abundance people and these scarcity people? And what was the right way? And I couldn't find a right or wrong. And I could logic myself into either one, but I could also feel the truth in both. You see, in bank, I teach that both abundance and scarcity are both true. But that's why we don't teach it. Because if I can logic you in or out of either, then there's something missing. See, what's true is just true. I can't logic you in or out. It's just fact. It's what you know to be real. So the more that I sat with it, the more it came out that I can't logic you into revering anything. See, reverence is a deeply embodied level of respect. And when you have a deep embodied respect, there ain't nothing that's going to shake you from that spot. Nothing. Not people's personalities, not their perspectives, not an opinion, not new information. That is you. That is 100% you. So what you revere is what you will back. You see, abundance and scarcity are both real and both true, but they live in the mind. Reverence lives in the body. The mind can be in the past or the present, but the body is in the now. I meant to say past and future, but you guys get what I'm saying. So when I say embody your innate worth, I'm talking about the practice of reverence for your life. So what has us stop having reverence for our life, or even stop from beginning to have reverence for our life? Well, it is this focus on scarcity and abundance. It is on this mental load, but it's also because we've all been instilled with one or many wealth imprints, in my perspective. So wealth imprint is something that you grew up with. It is something you bought into. It is a set of behaviors that you manifest in your everyday life. And these behaviors, these ways of being in the world, actually hinder your ability to access your innate wealth. They form a lens that is dirtied. So you can't even see how much you're actually worth because you need to behave in these particular sets of ways, which actually don't afford your wealth to come along. So your wealth imprint is what removes you from the economy of your life. So the economy, by definition, is the experience of wealth and resources in a society. The economy of your life is your access to wealth and the use of your own resources. A wealth imprint hinders your ability to use those well, to use them with reverence, and to use them responsibly. So today I actually want to dive into two of the very common wealth imprints that I see, and I actually call them potential imprints. So to understand what I mean by a potential imprint is not like a possibly in the future. A potential is the concept of potential energy, which is used in kinesiology. Potential energy is energy that is stored in something, okay? And this is actually how I review resources in general, is that they are potential energy. See, potential energy can be used, and it is in fact meant to be used for what it is supposed to be used for. We start to hinder its ability to create more of those resources in our lives. So let me explain a little bit further. So a potential imprint is a way that you are hindering the use of your resources to be used well. What is it to be used well? Well, typically resources must be reinvested. So if you cannot reinvest, you can't use it. So the two prints that come out of potential imprints, I like to refer to them as a hoarding imprint and a parking imprint. A hoarding imprint is someone who is excessively frugal to a fault, unfortunately. Excessive frugality also means that you're going to dismiss the quality of things that you need to purchase. For example, you'll go to the discount section at the grocery store. You say, whatever, it's food. But it lowers the quality. Now, over time, you are consistently frugal and you're saving tons of money, but your energy starts to deplete because you've been putting not so quality food in your body. Now your ability to reinvest, to make more money, diminishes because now you're sick, you're full of diseases, illness, inability to create more resource because previously you hoarded the resource of money through frugality. See, the thing is that hoarding as an imprint also doesn't just affect money. It affects how we show up. It affects how we are out in the world. It affects our embodiment of our innate wealth. In fact, most people who have a hoarding imprint are also notoriously stingy. Stingy with their time, stingy with their attention. See, generosity is a beautiful thing in this world because generosity recreates resources for everybody. If I give you a little bit of attention, quality attention, both you and I will leave the conversation feeling alive, feeling with more energy built in our bodies because both of us have reinvested our resource of power in that conversation. Stingy people say, I'm not going to give you my attention. I can't give you my time. Generosity understands that we can recreate the resource that in resonance with what's true. See, hoarding says, no, I'm not going to get any more of this. We see this a lot in scarcity. But there's pieces of scarcity that are true. Where people misunderstand that hoarding and scarcity are very different is scarcity does not actually remove you from participating in the economy of your life. It just means that you understand that resources must be renewed. You understand that this dollar, when it's gone, and you need to replenish that with another dollar. It doesn't say don't spend the dollar. It says respect the goddamn dollar. A hoarding imprint says I cannot spend this dollar. So you can't reinvest. So yeah, you might buy frugal stuff, but that's not a reinvestment. Scarcity says this dollar is so important that I'm only going to reinvest it into something that's going to get me more money, that's going to get me more time, that's going to get me more energy. So I'm going to buy the quality food, but I'm going to do it because I understand that this dollar's gone when I spend it. So I'm not going to disrespect that dollar by buying something that may impact my ability to create energy later on. That I'm not going to disrespect this dollar by buying something that is going to take away from my time on this planet. No, this dollar matters so much that I'm only going to spend it where it is reinvested. That's what scarcity is meant to tell you. That resources are scarce, they are limited, and ought to be respected. Hoarding says, no, I just need to keep this money because I might not get more of it. So I'm going to say fuck quality. I'm going to say fuck quality in all areas of my life. I'm going to be stingy. I'm going to hold it back. The potential energy of your resources of time, money, and energy are unpotentiated. It is now just stored energy. This is also why you see that most people who have hoarding tendencies have a blow-up point. Something drastic has to happen in their life, and on a spiritual level, it makes sense. They have a nervous breakdown, they have a massive health issue, because they need to actually reallocate those resources. They cannot remain stagnant. They cannot be unpotentiated. Now, having said that, hoarding as an imprint shows up in a multitude of different ways. And you may have a hoarding imprint, and there are definitely ways of practicing how to live and be in reverence and responsibility with those resources that will unpack the hoarding imprint. But one of the ways that people get really sneaky about unpacking hoarding is they start parking their potential energy. See, a parking imprint is a little different than hoarding, but nonetheless very much the same, because it removes you from the economy of your life because you are unable to reinvest your resources. Because unfortunately, with a parking imprint, it means you've invested them in something that's not yours. Typically, a parking imprint is somebody who invests their resources into other people. I know this one a little too well. See, my parking imprint is that I rescue people left, right, and center financially, emotionally, temporally. It is the most notorious with those who have a rescuing pattern in victim consciousness. It is the martyr, the person who will give up everything that they have in their life just to make sure you buy it by saying, but this person has potential, dismissing their own potential resources that could be used to be reinvested in their own lives. See, I've done this a lot. I've learned my lessons several times over. See, I would park my energy in giving people hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans. I would park my energy in spending too much time with people that I had no business being around. I would park my energy in maintaining relationships and jobs long past I needed to. Because heaven forbid I actually use those resources of time, money, and energy to reinvest in me. See, a parking imprint looks really nice, but it's quite disalarming or alarming, actually. Because you will never actually get satisfied. Your needs will never actually be met. You will never be able to access your innate wealth because all of your resources are being invested into, unfortunately, for lack of better terms, dead ends. Because the economy of your life requires your reinvestment and you're just leaking your resources everywhere else. That isn't to say you can't help people out once in a while, spot them $5. But most of the time, people with a parking imprint are doing this in extreme ways. This is where people stay in relationships for 10 plus years, even though they're not reverent to the heart that they have. Where they continue to endure abuse because they themselves are abusing their energy, their time, and their money by staying in something that's not true. You see, the embodiment of your innate wealth is about the way that you live your life. It's not about you cutting subscriptions and not buying the latte, and heaven forbid you have an avocado toast and now that's somehow going to affect your ability to get a mortgage. No, that's not what this is about. It's about understanding your relationship to your resources as a reflection of who you're willing to show up as in the world. Because when you operate through an imprint you can't actually see things clearly. And it's really hard to invest in yourself. You don't invest money into you by buying cheap groceries. You're not investing money into your time into you by taking care of your health. You're not even investing your own energy into yourself by maintaining boundaries. Somehow, some way, we as a society made all of this stuff wrong. That investing in yourself is somehow selfish. Let me tell you, selfish is the closest thing to a clean imprint you could have. Because it means that you matter and that you're willing to back you enough to invest in yourself. Yeah, we can work on this aspect of generosity because it's in the creation of community that we can build more resources. But it is not being generous from nothing. If I have a wallet of $100 and I can invest that $100 into building a business for myself and encourage you to spend your $100 in the same way or however way, the economy of life. But if I give my $100 to you because you don't want to do anything with it and you create a business that you really like, but now I have no money to even buy into your business, we've got a problem. We don't have an economy. You see, I want every person on this planet to feel wealthy in whatever way that looks for them, but without the idea that they have to hoard it and be stingy with their resources, worthy, but to actually live in alignment with their actual value. And understand that the way that they've experienced wealth will look so different from their neighbor, but have complete approval and reverence for that very fact. See, in Bankroll, this is what we do. We talk about money, of course. We talk about our relationships to time, money, and energy, and how all of that is a reflection of who we are and who we're willing to be. See, most of the world may never access their wealth because they can't be willing. The rest of us must be willing if we want to see any kind of transformation of society as it is. You see, it's not about the 1% billionaires, it's about the 99% who haven't been willing to grab the fucking bag. I want you to grab the fucking bag. Grab it for yourself and reinvest in all the ways that is true, reverent, responsible, and resonant for you. Not because some guy in fucking Toledo, Texas said to you, hey, honey, this is how you should invest your dollars. Not everybody is going to buy real estate. Not everybody is going to buy crypto. Not everybody's going to invest in an RSP. Some people, their wealth is reflected in living off the land. Some people want to live in a sailboat, eating fish, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I trust that the people that are living in deepest alignment to their innate value are the most wealthy on this planet. So I don't really care about getting you debt free, because that actually might be a part of the way that your wealth wants to be expressed. I don't really care about you changing your spending habits. If you only spending money on quality clothes is for you. I'm here to ensure that you have the practices behind you that have your resources of time, money, and energy match and accurately reflect who you are in the 3D world. You see, Wealth Imprints ensure that that reflection is messy, that it's absolutely inaccurate. Wealth needs to be clean off of your mirror. When you start embodying your innate wealth, the resources will show up for you to do it. They will be there for you at every step of the way. You will have enough money and time and energy for all of the things that are true for you to do in this lifetime. So if you are feeling called to do this work, I highly encourage you to come apply to Bank. If your application is approved, I will get on a call with you. In this one-on-one, we will look at your particular wealth imprint. I don't know what it is. And there's a good chance you might not either. So this is where we discover how you actually relate to time, money, and energy in terms of relationships. If time is the homewrecker and money is the trophy wife, because you never have enough time, but you need to show things off, then that has an energetic capacity we need to look at. Maybe you have a fear of your own power, and so you prefer to live small. All of these relate to imprints that we need to dismantle to ensure that you are embodying who you truly are in this world. And we do it in a really fun fucking way, to be honest. You see, I've got members in Bankroll who find themselves turned on about tax season, who are buying cars and $1 million houses. The members in Bankroll are anyone from making 6 figures to only 15. But at the end of the day, they're stepping further into their innate wealth every single day that they practice this work, reaching new levels of who they are and new levels of their embodiment that they would not have had they not practiced what it is to be reverent for who they are, to have a deep embodied respect for you. Applications are open all of the time. It's an ongoing membership. It has a 6-month minimum, because I understand that these topics can be really sensitive and not everyone wants to be working on them every day. So there's enough time and space for you to do everything you need to, including going MIA for 4 weeks. But most people stay beyond the 6 months. Not because they're required to, but because it is a place of practice. It's a place to work out on things that you may not have the space to otherwise. To bring clarity to places that you don't understand if you can bring reverence to it. Every month there is a hot seat coaching call where I'm on a call with you specifically about the things you've come to the call with. There's workshops for you to attend to work on things like managing your debt, paying off debt, understanding that credit cards aren't the evil Knievel here, but how to get interested in your own life, building your own cash flows if you're in a business. In fact, there's even a little piece about doing bookkeeping in a reverent way that doesn't feel so goddamn boring and dry. It doesn't matter what's inside of bank. What matters is your call to come join us inside the vault and see what's in your safety deposit box. What is yours to uncover and live entirely wealthy in this world. So with that, I will leave you. I wish you all the best if this is not the work for you. I totally understand, but if it is, trust yourself. I am not going to logic you in or out of it. Your reverence is embodied. And until then, your wealth will wait. Until next time.